Author Suzanne Collins was channel surfing a number of years ago, and she was flipping back between watching reality TV and coverage of the violence of the Iraq War, and she got inspired. And she began to write. And she wrote the most very popular and very much read trilogy, The Hunger Games. Now, many of you probably are familiar with this trilogy. Many of our young people are reading it. It's written in the voice of 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen, who lives in a post-apocalyptic world. The nations of North America have been destroyed by a catastrophe, and a whole new civilization arises from the ashes, and it's called Panem. Panem is ruled by a wealthy capital. It has 12 powerless satellites. And the central government controls the population through various cruelties. And the most horrifying of the cruelties is an annual reality show. And what they do is they choose 2 young people from each of the 12 satellites, a boy and a girl, and they have these 24 young teenagers fight to kill each other until there is only one remaining. They're forced to fight to the death for the sport of the capital's citizens, and to remind these satellites that they are at the mercy of their rulers. The book, the trilogy, depict violent images of teenagers killing teenagers. The first movie was released a few weeks ago, and it's one of the hottest movies in the country. And of course, I had to see it. And as I sat through it, it's a very disturbing movie. All I could think of was, something is terribly wrong here. Something is terribly wrong. You see, Panem is a godless society. There's no greater force to guide the citizens except their own selfish pursuits. And that's the criteria they use to make the decisions between right and wrong. Morality is relativized. Might makes right. Their greatest goal is their comfort. The citizens are glutted with fast food, and they're distracted by reality TV. And the beautiful people of the capital, they're simply oblivious to the pain and abuse around them. They sit back and experience teenagers killing teenagers as entertainment. Now, Jennifer Lawrence is the actress who plays Katniss Everdeen in this first movie. And they did an interview with her, and she describes Suzanne Collins' trilogy in this way. She says, "It's like holding up a terrible kind of mirror." And the author is saying to us that this is what our society could be like if we become desensitized to trauma and to each other's pain. This weekend, our scriptures challenge the times that we might be oblivious to the pain and abuse around us. This weekend, our scriptures challenge our insensitivity to all the difficulties and struggles that we see in our life and in our world. That letter of John says to us, "Children, let us love not just in word or speech, but in act and in deed." Let's act out what we talk about. And Jesus in John says, "I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit." Well, in the world of Panem, there's no vine. And the branches are godless. There's no real connection to one another. Everyone is simply out for themselves. There's not much love happening when adults can sit around and find it entertaining when children kill children. Something's terribly wrong in the Hunger Games trilogy. Something is terribly wrong in that society, and something was terribly wrong as I watched that movie, but it forces us to ask ourselves some very important questions. Might this trilogy that so many of our young people are reading, and so many of our young people are seeing this first movie and actually cheering on these teenagers killing one another, might this not be a warning to each one of us and a warning to our society? How oblivious are we? How desensitized are we? How dismissive are we to all that we see around us that's cruel and inhuman and without moral value? And has one of our greatest goals become our own personal comfort? Have we lost our connection to the vine and no longer consider ourselves the branches that need to bear good fruit for one another, not just for ourselves? Now, it's very interesting. If you have an opportunity to read the trilogy, and then you see the first movie, you realize that the screenwriters left out one of the most important lines in the book. The night before the games begin, Katniss and her partner, Peeta, are on the roof of their hotel, and they're watching the Capitol as they celebrate the beginning of these games. Peeta says to Katniss, "I keep wishing I could think of a way to show the Capitol that they don't own me, that I'm more than just a piece in their games." Well, Katniss hears this, but she believes that at first it's all about staying alive. She believes there's no chance of bettering her situation. Nothing she can do will really have anything significantly change. The best you can hope for is to be the one that survives out of the 24. So Peeta and Katniss are arguing about which one of them has the better chance of survival, and each believes that it's the other. But in the book now, Peeta turns to the mentor. Now, each of these kids has a mentor that's cheering them on in this fight. And Peeta says to the mentor, "She has no idea the effect that she can have." That's left out of the movie. And it's pivotal to the underlying theme of the trilogy that I think most of our young people miss, and certainly it's missed in the movie. Because the real challenge that this piece of literature has for us is something very significant that I believe something the author is trying to say to us, but we can so easily miss it. And the theme is this: not only can one person make a difference, but sometimes we make a difference in other people's lives without even knowing it. So if you read the trilogy, and I'm certainly not encouraging seeing the movie, but maybe it's important to see what your young people are seeing and reading and trying to help them figure out what's the real theme of this is. The theme seems to be that Katniss didn't set out to change the world. She simply did what was right, and change followed. She had no idea of the chain of events that her seemingly small actions would cause. This weekend, John's letter challenges us to do what is right. Not just talk about it, but do what is right and change will happen. And in John's gospel, we hear that we must do it together as the branches. We must be connected to one another and to the greater source, the vine. I think we all realize that a godless society that's hooked on reality TV and saturated with meeting its own selfish needs ends up like the Roman Empire. And author Suzanne Collins is placing a mirror in front of us and tells us that this is what we are heading for if we do not stop and take a look at ourselves. that each one of us can make a difference, and all together we can do amazing things. There's a great scene in the movie where Peter and Katniss pause to consider what it is they are actually being asked to do. Peter confides that he really doesn't want to kill anyone, though he realizes that he will likely have no choice. Yet he longs for a way to hold on to his humanity, his compassion. He longs for a way to not let those who created the violence force him to be a person of violence as well. Well, the scriptures this weekend ask us to pause and ask ourselves, what are those inhuman values that our society is overwhelming us with? And how do we hold on to our humanity? How do we hold on to our compassion for one another? That trilogy and the first movie, they're startling reminders to all of us that something is terribly wrong in that kind of society. And our scriptures challenge us to a deeper awareness that we are all interconnected branches, nourished by the vine, called to love one another in act and in deed. It has to start with each one of us, because every single person can make a difference.